Over the next 40 minutes or so, there's going to be stuff talked about in this video that you won't hear about in other videos and programs about alcoholism, the very fine details, the ins and outs of what happens when you want to give up the booze, how it affects your mind, your body and your soul. On the other hand, I'm not doing this in a judgmental or forceful way whatsoever. You may drink every day and enjoy it. Doesn't mean you've got a problem. I just hope you find this video educational, interesting and informative. What's the difference between a heavy drinker and an alcoholic?
Alcoholism is a chronic spiritual unrest, so to speak.
Alcohol withdrawal is horrendous.
What exactly is a detox?
This spiritual unrest is chronic.
All those guys you see in the bars around Nana at midday have definitely got problems with their drinking.
6 months of daily heavy drinking.
So what can I buy at the pharmacy to help me quit?
The alcohol has to come out somewhere.
What exactly are the withdrawal symptoms going to be like?
They will pick up again and drink no matter what.
So how can alcohol negatively affect the lives of expats living here in Thailand? Well, there could be a number of reasons why. Some people bring their problems with them. Others move here with good intentions and big ideas to change their lifestyles, but end up living permanently in holiday mode, doing all the stuff they did when they came here on holidays, like late nights in the bars, not eating properly, drinking, partying. Before they know it, 1 to 2 years has gone by and they've been on the piss every night of the week, and the cracks are starting to show. There's also loneliness, depression, rejection. It's easy to try and escape and hit the bottle. I've known a few guys over the years that this has happened to, and I'm pretty sure you have too. Some are able to get through it. Others can reach breaking point or even suicide, sadly. And it's even trickier when it's someone you know and they won't accept they've got a problem. Many friendships are made and broken here when one discovers that the other one has a drinking issue. Alcohol has a hell of a lot to answer for. Here's a comment that some of you might not like, but I wanted to read it out to get a wide range of different points of view. This guy says, after I did a month in a rehab clinic, I returned to the land of the living with the ability to read people and tell if they had issues with alcohol. I could go to bars and look at their behaviour and appearance and know what they were going through. All those guys you see in the bars around Nana at midday have definitely got problems with their drinking. So this guy went to a rehab for a month and now thinks he's a major authority. He's got a big ego as well by the sound of it. He should have stayed longer in rehab and done a bit of mental rehab, because there's stuff like CBT, mindfulness, meditation, that also helps you sort of get your head straight as well. And that is a major part of recovery from alcohol. As for the guys in the bars here at midday, I'm pretty sure rehab doesn't teach you to be the kind of person who walks around imposing their judgment and their views on people they've never met, not after just 1 month of sobriety. Someone who's been on the booze for, say, 6 months every night doesn't think he's got a problem. He wants to stop. Those first 3 or 4 days and nights, how's he going to feel? What's it going to be like for him?
6 months of daily heavy drinking will create a lot of dependency mentally, physically, emotionally. They tend to severely underestimate the impact it will have on them. High anxiety, no sleeping, tremors, insecurity. They can get diarrhea, sweating. All these symptoms are likely to come. Yeah.
What kind of medication can be found to cope with that?
There are different options. The risk is the seizure. That's the highest risk, and they can have severe complications. People can even die from it in extreme
Well, like an
cases.
epileptic seizure, like
Similar
the same
as an
one,
epileptic seizure, yeah. So the thing is with people, if they have no experience before that and then drink 6 months in a row, they think, I never had a seizure, so I'll be okay. But nobody had a seizure before their first seizure. So there is a high risk when people do it. There are different options. Lamotrigine is one, diazepam is one. There are different ways to go. Now, if someone is a daily drinker, it's always recommended to find help. And that doesn't have to be rehab per se. You can go to your doctor and say, this is my situation, and let the medical professionals see, like, hey, this is what you need to do. And you might get a week's worth of meds that will keep you safe. There are meds that help you lower your anxiety at the same time, help you getting to sleep at night. There are quite a few options to make it a safe and a bit more bearable situation than just going through cold turkey.
Here's one of your comments. It says, all alcoholics are egomaniacs with low self-esteem. Interesting thing to say, probably a one-sided opinion from someone without experience with alcohol addiction, but it's certainly the case with some people, isn't it? They have a couple of drinks and their behaviour totally changes, a bit like the guys who go out looking for confrontation in bars. You know, what are you looking at? Did you tread on my foot? Did you spill my pint? We used to call them 2-pint Van Dams because they have a couple of beers and they go around thinking they're Jean-Claude Van Damme looking for a fight. And I'm not sure whether Jean-Claude himself would approve of that. But then again, Jean-Claude Van Damme is in recovery himself, so maybe he would take it as a compliment. There's a difference, isn't there, between a heavy drinker and an alcoholic?
Yes, there is. There's an invisible line between heavy drinking and an alcoholic. With the heavy drinking, if you have a really strong reason, like a doctor's warning, a family member literally saying, hey, you don't stop, I'm going to leave, or a boss saying, if you don't stop, you're going to lose your job, they will stop. But with the alcoholic, there is nothing, no reason, no pleading, no justification, no determination, no willpower, nothing. They will pick up again and drink no matter what.
It's an obsession.
It's an obsession, and it expresses itself in two main ways. The mental part and the physical part. The mental is the mental obsession, so subtly powerful that it is more powerful than any human will. It will just talk you back into picking up again, sometimes with the most crazy reason. So basically, an alcoholic is somebody who's in a cycle of having a mind that won't allow you to stay stopped no matter what the determination, and a body that won't allow you to stop once you start. So you need help.
So how does someone fall into that cycle? Is it because they love drinking so much that it just sort of appears, or is it deeper than that?
Early in everybody's drinking career, you know, we drink, or one drinks because it makes us feel good, make you feel good. That's why we drink, right? And for those people that have a genetic predisposition, they will cross the line as I had mentioned earlier the invisible line quite quickly. I really don't know, 6 months, a year, you know. For those people who don't have this genetic component, they will become an alcoholic just because of the duration of the drinking. They will develop alcoholism. But once that line is crossed, there's an additional problem because this condition exhibits what we call denial. And denial just expresses itself in the drinker thinking that he can handle it. He doesn't want to stop just yet. If he wanted to stop, he can stop. That's the thinking, but it isn't true.
When I used to go out to bars and nightclubs or wherever it was I was DJing, things naturally revolved around drinking alcohol because wherever you played you got free drinks and people would bring you beers and shots, and whether you had a great night out would often depend on how much booze you could consume. The more the better was the general idea, and you'd always end up smashed somewhere at 4 or 5 in the morning. But sometimes you'd come across someone who was teetotal or didn't drink, and that was a total alien concept to me back then. I was almost a little bit suspicious of them, that they were watching how much I was drinking and judging me, because how can someone go out all night, have a great time and party without touching a drop of alcohol? Weird, isn't it? But there's no doubt that the expat social and nightlife scene here does revolve around drinking booze, and you can't avoid it. Charlie, something I find, being someone who doesn't really drink, a lot of expats, you know, on the social scene, it revolves around drinking alcohol. And if I'm out somewhere and a few people are getting drunk and I'm not drinking, they tend to view me with suspicion. Do you find that?
I don't drink alcohol myself. I haven't since I'm a very young man. And it's not a big deal to me. I don't really think much about it at all one way or the other. You know, if you want to have a drink, I don't take note of it. But apparently the reverse, it seems to be more heavy drinkers have the issue. Because the more they drank, some of them, not all of them, seemed to take notice of my drinking, you know, 1 or 2 Coke Lights in the time that we were there. That made them uncomfortable, or so it seemed to me. I can't get inside of their skin and know what's going on in their head, but they truly seem to not be comfortable with the fact, you're not going to have a shot with us? And I'm like, well, no thanks. You know, and it's like they become more and more insistent about it. And that's not the first time it's happened in my life, just the most recent.
When I was a heavy drinker and someone would be teetotal or didn't drink, I'd be really conscious of them because I was worried that they were counting how many drinks I would have.
I think it depends on where you are, though. I have many expat friends who, you know, can take a drink or not take a drink. As a matter of fact, the reverse happens as well. Is you know, they'll offer, would you like to have a drink? And I'll decline, and they won't bother drinking either. Okay, I'll have a Coke Light as well. You know, so I've seen that kind of happen as well. My friend Dennis, who manages the bar, I mean, he drinks. I mean, it's part of his job, I guess. You know, but he barely takes notice of it. So it's not all of them. I think it's a bit, we're engaging a little bit in stereotypes here when we talk about this. But nonetheless, stereotypes have a foundation in reality. If you go to Pattaya, you're going to meet the kind of guys that we're talking about. You know, they spend much of their time hanging out, drinking beer, and doing whatever else that they're going to do. And I think they pay a price for it. But those kinds of folks seem to me to be quite uncomfortable if they're hanging around with me, not drinking.
Alcoholics Anonymous, or AA, is not everyone's cup of tea. The fundamentals of it date back as far as 1938. Do those fundamentals still hold up in 2024? I don't know, but surely millions worldwide can't be wrong. So another method that is talked about a lot and is well known is AA, and some people swear by it. There must be something about it. What's so good about AA?
Well, AA, first of all, once again, it recreates that sense of identity, that sense of I'm not the only one. Now, why does one need to join it every day? Well, this craving for alcohol is twofold. The first one is really the physical craving, which lasts for about a month and a half. You know, but once you go into a rehab and you are weaned off the physical craving, why do you pick up again? Well, alcoholism is a chronic spiritual unrest, so to speak. You're just not happy. So what AA does is that it teaches you a way of looking at life, a way of dealing with life that keeps this spiritual and emotional unrest at bay on a daily basis, so that there is no longer any need to have this urge to go back to the old solution that doesn't work anyway.
There's some people mock it. They say things like, AA is like a religion, a cult. It teaches people coming off booze to, beat themselves up and talk about it every day and tell themselves, that they're an alcoholic every day. Surely it's the time to move forward and forget all that, or is that not the way it works?
Well, the way I look at that is that, first of all, fortunately or unfortunately, the basic text from which all AA information comes from, which is called the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, was written in the late 30s in the Bible Belt in the United States. And the only word they had for something greater than yourself, some divine being, whatever, they used the word God. Not necessarily God as the church would talk about it, but a power greater than yourself. It could be anything. It could be your AA group. If you couldn't stay sober on your own, and by going to these meetings, you're able to stay sober, that's obviously a power greater than you. Instead of holding on and relying only on self, you go ahead and rely on the group. This spiritual unrest is chronic. If you don't treat it on an ongoing basis, the desire for alcohol comes back. But if you're in a safe environment where alcoholics are together, they identify for the first time perhaps that we have this way of thinking, this way of acting, this way of feeling, this way of suffering that nobody understands, with a primary aim of getting off the booze. That then creates that safe environment. What you really have is nothing more than a daily reprieve dependent on you keeping spiritually fit. Very similar to somebody with type 2 diabetes, where as long as your sugar is right, as long as your diet is right, literally at that moment, you don't have diabetes. But if you don't take care of it, you get sick again. Exactly the same.
Would you say that there's a difference between someone who goes through the AA system and has those beliefs, and then someone who goes through the other form of rehab, which is counselling, physical and mental therapy, and then is able to continue living their lives and forget about it? Would you say the people who go to AA are more vulnerable and weaker-willed?
I don't know the true answer to that question other than my own opinion. And my opinion is that those people that need AA long-term are the ones that are sicker. Not weaker, sicker. And maybe it is true that after intensive inpatient, after all of that stuff, in the end, they're not true alcoholics in the sense as it's expressed in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. They are just heavy drinkers that once the alcohol is gone, they are able to live pretty normal lives.
So it goes back to what we started with.
Correct.
Heavy drinkers.
Correct.
And alcoholics.
Yeah.
It's easy to fall into that habit of drinking alone and enjoying your own space, alone with your music and memories of the past and your fantasies about the future. The only thing missing here is the present, because when you're in that bubble, the only thing at the present moment is pouring another drink. Detoxification is quite an ominous, scary sounding word, isn't it? I first heard it when I was at school, and there was a kid whose dad had died of cirrhosis of the liver. And I heard people saying he should have had a detox 3 years ago and he would have lived. I actually thought detox meant forced surgery, but it's definitely not that. Detox is when your body goes through a process of eliminating toxins, usually after a prolonged period of substance abuse. So what happens during detox? What do they give you and how do you feel? I went down to Hope Rehab Thailand and spoke to Mike, who's going to give us all the gory details. So your job is detox?
Yeah, so my title is Detox Manager. Generally, you know, when people are coming off alcohol and have been drinking for a long time, it's unsafe not to come away from alcohol without a medical detox. Same with benzos. You know, they're the two big ones really. You know, we do detox off other substances like heroin, but generally coming off alcohol and coming off benzos are the two really dangerous ones. My first interaction when they come to site, so they'll come in, I'll sit with them. So for an example, if it's an alcohol detox and someone's been using a litre of vodka a day for, say, the last year, you know, that is a medical detox because that would just be dangerous to go cold turkey. Over the first sort of 2 or 3 days, we would just keep them on a stable amount of diazepam just to get them settled in, you know, because there's the overwhelmingness of rehab, the overwhelmingness of meeting all your peers and all the staff, you know, there's all that. So we'd just get them settled over the first 2 or 3 days, and then we would look at a really well-managed reduction off the diazepam for the alcohol and benzodiazepine detoxes. Also within that we would give out anti-seizure medication to keep them stable and just quell some of their fears, you know. And then on top of that we'd look at making sure that on a daily basis we're checking in with them, we're doing their observations, so their blood pressure, their pulse, their oxygen levels, you know, and we're doing that on a daily basis a couple of times a day and just checking that everything is where it should be. When you're separated, when you've been drinking alcohol for a long time and then separated from it, you haven't been getting proper REM sleep. You know what I mean? So you have to get into some sleep hygiene. And for the first few days, we will help with sleep. But after that, you know, we'll use a lot of our other tools like meditation, mindfulness, sleep hygiene to help people get into a regular, proper sleeping pattern. You know, the alcohol will come out in sweat. You know what I mean? So during the night, you might get some sleep, but you'll wake up in pools of sweat because the alcohol has to come out somewhere. You know, and the toxins have to come out somewhere. So, you know, our amazing Thai staff will make sure on a daily basis the room's tidy, you know, the bed's changed, and they've got everything that they need to be comfortable while they're going through the uncomfortability of being separated from their substance. You know, we've all experienced it. A lot of the staff here have experienced it, you know, and we can use our own experience to share with others through that identification that they will get through it. It's just going to be uncomfortable for a period of time.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Mike, for talking to me. When I was at my worst, I couldn't just have 1 or 2 drinks and be happy like everyone else. Something in my mind would click and I had to turn it into a binge or a long session where I ended up blind drunk and didn't know where I was. This went on for about 3.5 years, every night, absolutely hammered. Then I found a girlfriend and she persuaded me to get fit and take up Muay Thai. So for the first time in 3.5 years, I had a night off the booze and it was absolute hell. I couldn't sleep, I was tense, I was irritable, I kept watching the clock, I was sweating, I couldn't sit still. So I bought some medication to help me deal with that and I got really into Muay Thai. And then drinking became something that I just didn't do anymore. I grew up and moved on. I didn't have that phobia where I couldn't walk past a pub or smell alcohol without getting triggered. Maybe I was one of the lucky ones and got off lightly. For obvious reasons, I used to hate mornings when I was drinking. The sun coming up early in the summer months used to ruin my drinking sessions. So I bought heavy blackout curtains to keep the sunshine out. I preferred the winter months because I often got up at 4 p.m. as it was getting dark. I dreamed of moving to parts of Scandinavia where there is no daylight in the winter months. I was so depressed that I would drink without setting a bedtime. The plan was to just keep going until I passed out. One day I woke up in a pool of blood after being out cold for 17 hours. I'd fallen forward while taking a piss and broken the mirror in front of me. I had a huge gash on my forehead that needed stitches. I called an ambulance and they took me to the hospital. The paramedics were talking to me as if I was a nuisance, really offhandish. I later complained to the staff at reception, who were just as short with me and said that they were always dealing with people like me. Those words haunted me because I didn't see myself as someone like them, the alcoholic losers, but here I was. I went home and had one last little party and then went to see my doctor. He asked me a few questions and I told him everything. Then he gave me some meds and I joined a group for addicts. A year later, and I'd started a degree course in counselling and psychology. I now help people who used to be people like me. So there we are, there's 2 feel-good stories for you, which I think is about enough for this video because, let's be honest, these optimistic tales about defeating the demon drink are 10 a penny. You know how it goes. They battled addiction, quit the booze, got sober, became born again and lived happily ever after in a booze-free lifestyle. But what about the ones who didn't live happily ever after? Rob, you remember Dave, right?
I had a guy down in Jomtien.
Yeah.
There's so many stories like this, unfortunately. There's a guy called Dave, and he moved here, expat, fell in love with the place, and was just a really sensible guy. He was actually really smart as well. And he moved out here, and again, he got stuck in the holiday period, which is fine. We've all done it. But he kept going out into Pattaya, even though he had a condo in Jomtien. But he kept going down there anyway because he knew a few girls down there, and a few of the guys kept going out, and they were like, "Oh, come out, have a beer," like 7 days a week. And it's easily done. You can kind of get lost with the people you know here. Like, everyone wants to have a beer all of the time.
And everyone's your mate as well.
Yeah, and everyone's your mate. It can be a bit of a tricky situation here. He kept going out, and he didn't realise what he was doing because he was having such a good time. He was happy. He was like, "Yeah, I'm living my best life. Look at me as an expat." And before he knew it, he couldn't pay his rent. The realisation of what he'd done and how he just kind of burned away and destroyed everything that he kind of worked hard for. Because you have to work hard to move here and everything else. And unfortunately, instead of trying to stop and figure it out and get help, we woke up one day and it was on the news. He jumped off his balcony and he'd just given up. He didn't know what to do. He was embarrassed. He put himself in such a situation.
So how long was it from when he arrived here to live till when he jumped off the balcony?
I think it was only like 5 months. I think he had a few years of money and he wanted to do something online. Yeah. Like I said, people just get lonely, they get lost in the sauce, they get encouraged, peer pressure to go out. And I don't think he realised how much he was spending. And, I've done that as well. Like the conversion between British money and Thai money. I'm like, I don't know, that's all right, that's cheap, that's okay. And especially when you're surrounded by other people that have more money, it's very difficult to, kind of work stuff like that out. And I don't know whether he wasn't keeping an eye on his money or whether he'd spent money on other things. I'm not too sure, but he'd obviously dug himself such a hole. And just a bit sad, really.
Sad end, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You don't want to come here for that.
No.
That's not living life.
No. All right, let's go on to someone who's been a hard drinker for years and years. Obviously, it's going to be a lot worse, right? Where would you suggest they go first?
After years of alcohol abuse, the impact it has on people mentally is very severe. Now, still a good place to start would be your GP, but highly likely he will send you straight to rehab, because in rehab you get like a medically guided detox, so you're safe until you're stable, and then you're going to learn all the tools you need to know in order to live life without alcohol and drugs. Because many years of substance abuse, alcohol or other stuff, it develops all kinds of patterns and traits in a person that most people would consider dysfunctional. Like in addiction, we develop dysfunctional behaviors, and people need to work through that. Now, of course, you can stop drinking and white knuckle it, but then you are left with all the behaviors, traits, characteristics of the alcoholic. And in treatment, that's called the dry drunk, someone who thinks and behaves and speaks like an alcoholic. He just doesn't drink anymore. And often white knuckling it is a temporary solution. Some people can do it for months, some people for a few years, but it's very hard to find happiness in white knuckling it. And learning tools and learning to be self-reflective and learning to find more helpful ways of dealing with situations tend to be much more successful.
Your organs, your body, physically, you stop drinking suddenly, there's got to be a reaction, right?
Big reaction. Alcohol withdrawal is horrendous. Now, if you would put 100 heroin addicts in a room, they are all going to feel like they're going to die, but none of them will die. Opiate addicts only die from having too much opiates, not of too little. But if you put 100 alcoholics in a room, like say 20 might be dead, yeah, if they're not medicated.
So when they can die if they
yeah.
suddenly withdraw.
Yeah, alcohol withdrawal is horrendous, yeah.
So if you're thinking of kicking the booze on your own at home, then there are a few medications you can buy from your local pharmacy that will help you get through the first couple of weeks of sobriety. Dosages of these medications may vary, of course, depending on how much you drank, but I'm pretty sure with a quick Google search you can work out what may work for you and how much of that you may need to take. Of course, a positive mindset and plenty of willpower will also help you get through this. So the first medication is Zopiclone, a well-known sleeping tablet given to insomniacs to help them get a good night's sleep. It is quite strong and becomes habit forming after a while, so do bear that in mind. But this is a habit you can kick further down the line. The priority is right now to get off the booze, isn't it? Another medication is amitriptyline. This is more of a relaxant that helps you sleep, probably more favourable than Zopiclone in that your body doesn't build up resistance, so it's less likely to become habit forming. And the last one I'm going to mention is, of course, diazepam, also known as Valium. And this is not generally available in pharmacies, although some people claim it is at certain pharmacies in certain areas, but I can't verify that. The easiest way to get this would be to make an appointment at your local hospital with a doctor, tell them why you want it, and they should be able to sort you out. So it's off the booze and onto the meds, a transition that some people may not see as favourable, but you've got to start somewhere, otherwise you'll end up in a place like this.
For a serious alcoholic, and let me use the situation if you're an expat in Thailand per se, there are really two options, right? Well, there's three options. The first option is do your best to get these detox meds in a pharmacy, but that's not really recommended because you don't know about the dosages, and when things get rough, you're going to run over to the liquor store anyway. It's really not recommended at all. The other two options is to put yourself in a safe environment. That's the key. That's the key. There are two sorts of safe environment. One is the burgeoning, fast-growing Western rehabs in Thailand. The impediment there is really the cost. They cost anywhere from 250,000 baht a month to 350,000, and for the luxury ones, way upwards, maybe double that. Maybe even up to $1 million a month. You can always check into a Thai rehab. There's a national network of Thai rehabs under the name Tanyarak Hospital. Their hotline number is 1165. And all I can say is go over to them, see them, get inpatient because they're so booked up, they're going to just give you meds and say go home. But if you're in a safe environment where alcoholics are together, they identify for the first time perhaps that we have this way of thinking, this way of acting, this way of feeling, this way of suffering that nobody understands, with a primary aim of getting off the booze. That then creates that safe environment. And these two places that I had mentioned are the safe environment that allows you to safely come off the alcohol.
So there we are, that's the finer details and the ins and outs of alcoholism. I hope you found this video interesting, educational and informative. Please do subscribe if you haven't already done so. If you want to support the channel, you can do so via the Buy Me a Coffee link on the screen. There's also links to PayPal and Ko-fi in the description, or you can join the channel and become a member. That just leaves me to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.